This is Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready. We're about to live in your head rent-free.
All right, welcome back, everybody. And guess what this episode is? It's a
HOOPAJOOB.
There we go. On this HOOPAJOOB, we're going to get back to the writing side of things that a lot of us dabble in here. And
I'm sorry, Cajun. I was stomping on you there.
oh, okay, stomp away.
I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
I'm Marcus.
And I'm Andre.
And I'm Cajun, and we're all here at the ranch again.
Yes, we are.
Love it.
Just had a fine meal prepared by Cajun.
Fine.
Oh,
Yes.
Fine.
We greatly appreciate your hospitality and generosity, sir.
Yes.
He puts Martin Stewart to shame. I'm going with the male version.
At
of
least
that
he didn't say Martha this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, puts her to shame, too.
Yes.
All right.
Short ribs. It's very good. It's very good.
Oh,
Yes, we had short ribs. I also did some pulled beef, my homemade sauces, a bourbon
yeah.
barbecue, a
Bourbon
mustard
barbecue was
oil,
excellent.
Alabama white,
Had some of that on the potatoes, too.
and some big taters.
That's right.
It was a man's meal today.
It was.
Man, that's right. Manly men doing manly things. That's what we're all about here.
Meat and taters.
That's
Yep,
right.
meat and taters, yep.
My God.
All right. Well, we're going to talk about a seminar that I went to recently in Colorado Springs in the month of February there, and we'll give some updates on how personal writing projects have been going and anything else to take note of in the writing industry today that we want to cover. So,
Now, what was the name of this one?
this was a Superstars writing
Superstars,
seminar,
right, okay.
and it was started about 10 years ago by Kevin J. Anderson.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking, that name sounds familiar, well, even if you've never read any of his works, you should recognize it from the new Dune release.
That's right.
Kevin
yeah.
J. Anderson and Herbert's son wrote the last two movies here that's been coming out together.
Yeah, they did, of course, several of the follow-on novels. And, you know,
oh, yes, quite a few.
I liked some of them, but I thought some of them were just not. It didn't seem to fit with the mythology that Frank Herbert had kind of laid out to me. But
Well, now, that's an interesting note you bring that up. When I was listening to one of Kevin's talks there, he said that as they got into it, they were trying to decide exactly what direction it needed to go in. Because Frank's son, he wasn't really keen on getting into it at first till Kevin and him sat down to talk. And his son was cleaning out the garage.
Oh, wow.
And there was a box up in the rafters that had been up there for years. They had got it down, and it was notebook upon notebook of Frank's notes.
Huh. Wow.
They were
That's
lucky enough
the
to find
basis
that.
of what they work with?
And they used a lot of that to get that, which gave them direction on where they headed.
So some of the good stuff may have been Herbert. Some of it may not have been Herbert.
maybe it's hard to say without seeing the original material. And of course, not to be fair, the writing styles are very different as well, and that also will color the experience of the books.
Oh, yes.
So,
oh, yes.
there's some of that. I enjoyed reading them. I just, they weren't necessarily what I thought of as the past of Dune, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But anyways, we're getting far afield. Kevin J. Anderson is a great writer.
Oh, yes, he's done so many things connected with the Star Wars universe over the years and many other franchises out there. You got to stop and think. Kevin J., besides the older ones going back to Heinlein and Asimov and so forth, he is one of the original OGs of the modern world that we grew up with from our youth.
Oh, yeah.
Kevin J., his wife, Rebecca Moesta, Wesley Dean Smith. I forget exactly how you pronounce
think
that one.
Smythe, yeah,
Smith. It might be Smith, I think. Who was another one?
You talking Anne McCaffrey and things like
Anne
that?
McCaffrey's in that group. Of course, her son's at a lot of these events, and he continued on with a lot
Here's
of
Anthony.
stuff.
Here's Anthony, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Mercedes Lackey, she's still running around. And
A lot of
doing
these
good stuff.
people ran together back in New York City and some of the bigger places together, and they came up together.
C.J. Cherry
Jim
is the one
Butcher.
that, was Jim Butcher. Which
Alan Dean Foster.
Alan Dean
Dean
Foster.
Foster's
Yeah, he
another
did a
one.
lot
Yeah,
of Star
they
Trek
all
adaptations.
know each other.
As a matter of fact, Foster did Star Wars novels before Kevin J. did them.
Yes.
Oh yeah, and he did the adaptations of the animated series in the Star Trek universe back in the 70s.
Yeah.
That plus he also did, if I remember right, the actual screenplay for Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Oh,
And Timothy Zahn was up in Indianapolis at that show.
Oh yeah,
excellent.
I wish he'd been able to make it up that way because his trilogy of Thrawn
Yeah, that was
one of the
phenomenal.
best ever written.
Yeah. I believe that was the first licensed extended universe
It was.
novels back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. But Superstores, yeah, I know I've talked about a 20 books to 50K conference in
Las Vegas.
every year in November. And Superstores reminds me more of that when it first started out before they got so big. Superstores caps their attendance at like 400. So it doesn't go really extreme. They have it in Colorado Springs. Nice area, a lot of nice restaurants, but it's not all the glitz and glamour and neon and shows of Vegas.
Right.
So you don't get distracted. You go there to learn, to work, and so forth. That's the way 20 Books started out when I first went. I think there was about 350 people at the first one I went to, and that was actually the second one they did. So I was really enjoyed getting back to Superstores and that more smaller size.
See, that sounds very appealing to me because that's what I love about Imaginarium here in town.
Yes.
Is that it's small and they put on so many different seminars and workshops. You can't go to all the ones you want to go to.
No,
Yeah,
not at
absolutely.
all.
The content
and that's
is
coming up
primo.
this July
That's
for
right.
anybody out there that's in the area and stuff
Yep.
that might want
July
to take it in.
19th, 20th, and 21st, I believe.
That's right.
It's definitely worth going to also.
Yep.
Superstores, it's a little pricier the first time you go, but once you go, you're considered an alumni. He's basically treating it as a school. In fact, Kevin J. Anderson has a master's program through Western University on publication
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
that he's been teaching for several years now. So he treats it very seriously as a learning experience. So once you go the first time, then it's like $400 cheaper after that because you're considered an alumni.
That's some significant jack.
Right. This is, it is not for the faint of heart. We go to Imaginarium, it's $150. Less if you get it early, but
This was closer to like $800 or so the
Yeah.
first time out.
For 4 days, am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is normally that's what most of these things run is a
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Yeah.
Which, if you break it down on 4 days, it seems more reasonable to the mind, even though it is a bit of a lump to put out
Right,
to begin
Right.
with.
Yeah, it's about $100 a day, which is about
Minimum, yeah.
which is about what you're looking at. Yeah.
but from everything you've talked about and from what I've read on the website, it is well worth it if you can cough up the dough and have the time to take from work.
And the people that Kevin J., like I say, has been in the business so long. He had Jim Butcher there this year.
Yeah, amazing.
One
author.
of your favorite writers I saw again, and that would be
David Weber.
David Weber,
Yes.
which he's always scheduled to be back next year. I do know that off the top of my head. I saw that announcement the other day.
He gives a great talk. I've seen some of his online talks.
He did, and he went to one talk that I went to that he filled in for somebody else at the last minute that couldn't make it due to weather issues or so forth, and it was on preparation from the business side, like what taxes and so forth.
Yeah, you and
what
I've
to
had
set up,
conversations
which
about that.
I was
Yeah.
talking to Francis here
Yeah.
that he recommended setting up an S corp.
Yes.
Because with an S corp, your writing can never be classified by the IRS as a hobby if it doesn't make profit. A lot of things, if you're doing it as a hobby and taking off your taxes after 4 or 5 years at the most, if they don't see a profit and you're paying taxes, they will classify it as a hobby and you will no longer be able to take it off on your taxes. But if you set it up as an S corp, they cannot do that.
Wise words. Wise words.
It costs
Yes.
a little jack to set it up that way, but
Even that
That's
itself.
good advice.
That itself would be taking you
because
off.
on the average,
you
a
take that off on
writer's
your
not
taxes.
going to make money for a number of years till he has a backlog or catalog.
Yep. Catalog is so important, especially if you're doing it independently. Because you need to have multiple titles for sale for Amazon's own algorithms to really start taking you seriously, unless you manage your first launch right.
Yeah.
And you manage to strike gold.
And that's there are very few out there like Terry Brooks. Were you all?
Yes.
We were at the same panel at Imaginarium, and he was on there. Of course, he's written gazillion and is a legend. And they were talking about how did you get in the business. He said, "Well, my first book sold 1 million copies, so I guess I was lucky." They
asked what do you recommend doing
Yeah,
to be
yes.
successful? And he's
Yeah.
like, well, I really don't know because
first book sold 1 million
Yeah.
copies. And
so my recommendation is sell 1 million copies.
that's right.
Yeah,
which
just go do that.
Everybody laughed, but he's right. I mean, and that goes back to what I hear a lot of when we talk, because in the writer's universe, there's always people talking. How'd you do it? How do you want to do it? How can you do it? And luck cannot be minimized. It cannot be minimized. There is a certain amount of that. That is just kind of the thing, being in the right place at the right time, talking to the right people at the right time, I think it is a people business. I really do. the more I do it. You got to have a certain degree of talent, but that can be honed, that can be crafted, that can be gotten there.
Well,
that
and-
takes time.
And honestly, judging by some of the books I've seen that have been published traditionally, even
Yeah,
I don't mean even the independent one, the people who do it themselves.
yeah.
But judging by some of those traditionally published books that I've read, even talent is a lot lower level than you think.
Oh yeah, it is because there's some of them. How did this get? Because I'm a big forensic editor most of the time. It's harder to do on your own work, but I mean, I spot a typo from 1,000 yards. And what? Or people that that professionally are doing sort of things, and they'll send out emails of the worst. But you can go on any website you want, news website. And how did this pass muster? Answer: nobody edits. They want to get it out immediately.
Well, and even in the most highly edited book from a traditional publisher, something's going to slip through.
And I get that, but I think you're right. This bucks the percentages.
Yeah. Well, it's not even just the typos. I mean, just the quality of the writing itself. Whether
Martin is about to pee his pants over here. I
No,
think,
no,
so.
no. I don't have a ton to contribute to this because I don't have the experience that you guys have. But oddly enough, I stumbled across a couple of articles about authors this week. Yeah, perhaps
how fortuitous.
perhaps something is listening. I don't know. But I read a lengthy article on Cormac McCarthy.
Oh yes, an amazing author.
Right.
Somewhat controversial, only because he's so in your face and so dark,
Yeah, the hyper violent.
hyper violent. That's
Hyper-violent.
exactly it.
But and it talked about the span of his career was so unusual. He began writing, I think it's like in the early '60s,
Yeah.
and after he finished his first novel, he really had no idea what to do. So the only publishing house he knew about was Random House. He just mailed it in, and it just I forget what they call the pile, but it
Slush
Slush pile.
slush pile. It just went on the slush pile until an editor came across it.
Just so happened. Yeah.
Just
There's your luck.
and that editor thought it was awesome.
Yeah, saw something in that.
And so he got published, but he sold like 2,500 copies,
That's a success.
That's a high success on that. Yeah, and
but not for Random House.
well, no, but
I mean, it was a
in
money
the 60s. It was,
loser.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. But I've been hearing a lot lately about the gatekeeping that is going on at the big publishers.
Yes.
And I'm glad you kind of talked to
And
that.
so his career spans this change of all of these independent publishers then going away.
Yep.
Yes.
They're all being, merged and bought and consumed. And what then became important was you couldn't just be this boutique publisher
No.
where you had 10 misses and one hit. The people who took over these conglomerations said, no, every book's got to make a profit and you better figure it out.
Yeah.
And so as he got in along the line there, he eventually left Random House. The editor who had kind of sustained him died, and in '79 he hired an agent, and that agent
that.
then engineered a move to another publisher,
Yeah.
who then promoted him, and then suddenly a few years later he's a success. But he went through many years of getting by on like grants.
Yeah.
Like he, like a MacArthur Genius Grant or something. That's what allowed him to like eat.
Yeah.
But he had nothing for a long time, and then suddenly he started having some success, and eventually, like No Country for Old Men and
It's a
another
huge one.
book
Yeah.
became movies, and then suddenly he's a huge success. So it was this. He benefited from both publishing models in odd ways.
Yeah.
And
It's because of his time.
he stayed
when
in
he
the
was. Yeah.
business. Somebody kept him in the business and kept him writing, even though he wasn't a commercial success.
Yeah.
And then when the model changed, then he became a commercial success.
And
because
that's
people pushed.
huge.
They put out they promoted him because of the quality.
Right.
And promotion is big in the industry. And like you, I'm not a producer of literature. I'm a consumer of it. But the name that comes to mind is Stephen King.
Of course.
His writing is consumed widely, and from a technical point of view, I would say it's not really that great of writing.
Oh, I disagree.
I think the stories are wonderful, but
If you read, especially if you read Stephen King from the beginning
I read everything he's
to
written.
today, I think his writing is is just orders of magnitude better. Now, the one thing I will disagree on as far as quality is that nobody edits. So, I mean, he talks about how he will, he'll write and he pantsers, he's a pantser, and then he immediately cuts 10%. He needs to cut about at least a quarter because there's a lot of stuff he leaves in that other writers are not allowed to.
But my point being is that the name Stephen King, he could publish takeout menus
And
he's
it
going to
would
sell
sell.
10 million copies.
But the reason why, though, is he's consistently good.
Well, yeah, he had to get to that point. I mean,
Yeah.
because you had to have, the 70s and 80s and 90s. He's putting out stuff to the point. And of course, once you make it into the movies, you're a name. But he never dropped off in quality, or I don't want to say quality. I want to say
he got
ideas.
a little quality for a few years there,
Yeah,
where he
wait.
had a few difficulties.
Well, yeah, and that's when he was
Chemical
addicted too.
difficulties.
Well, no, actually, some people think when he was
Well,
on
Rick,
drugs is when he was
some
the
is
best.
better, and
Yeah.
there's some talk about that. Yes.
Yeah, and I don't know that I necessarily agree, but the thing is, he worked.
Oh, and still does.
and
yeah.
he still does, and he works every day except his birthday and Christmas, apparently, and I'm sure a few other days. You got to go to the doctor, whatever. That's understood. But if it's available as a work day, he works it, and that's how he's honed his craft.
Yeah, and then become a billionaire. And
It
but rightfully
shows-
so, earnedly so.
Genre kind of matters.
Mm-hmm.
He published in a genre that was more tailored for consumption than say like Cormac
yeah.
McCarthy.
Well, yeah, it's commercial fiction,
Yeah.
which
I mean, McCarthy's
which has
stuff
changed a
is-
lot
You've really
since
got to
that time.
want to take a bite of his stuff because again, one of his early novels was like a serial pedophile killer, story, and No Country for Old Men is the hyper violent, non-redemptive. There's no hero's redemption in a lot of his stories.
Right. Yeah. It's very. I don't want to say nihilistic, but it's certainly dark. But there's a
Nihilistic's maybe not wrong.
and I'm
He was not much of a talker, like very famously, like his interview with Oprah was very flat because he doesn't promote himself and he doesn't go on talks and didn't. I mean, he is dead now.
he definitely doesn't do
He
that.
doesn't
now.
do it now
Yeah.
because he passed away in 23. I think he was like 89 though.
Yeah, he's got quite a
Yeah,
prolific streak because he's been doing this since the '60s.
Yeah.
But only recently, relatively speaking, come into his own. But he's also another example of kind of the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah, but so he didn't go out and do the talks and all that. Try to bring people in. He's just like, I'm just a writer. I'm not a celebrity.
But that's
I know.
that's the disconnect.
Yeah. So, but he in some of the statements he did make, I found interesting that essentially this idea of, look, humans are scum, and this notion that we can be better and improve ourselves is so dangerous, and the people who buy into that are the first ones who would not only sacrifice their freedom but take your freedom away from you in the name of this improvement of humanity. It's like, oh, that's a dark dude.
So, but when you said that humans are scum, first thing I thought was, I think Martin has that tattooed on the small of his back.
Well, I get it. Why would it be,
No, on the inside of his eyelids.
seared into my memory because it stood out? This writer that's not a very writery sentiment because usually it's about this hero that comes out better at the end after a trial.
Well, and
That's not what he did.
And it's very interesting you say that because one of the things that we've come to in this change, and I think it's changing back, I think, but you still see it, especially in the gatekeepers, is there are certain formulas or general tracks that you have to have just to get looked at by anything. Your protagonist must have an arc. They must change in some fashion. It can be negative, but as a general, they don't like that. And there's certain expectations that you have to have. And the more you learn about it, they are, I don't want to say constricting, but they are multiple. They are legion.
Part of
very
that's
conventional.
Yeah.
Part of that, though, is just the genre. One of the things that I think novices in the field glom onto is it's like, well, tropes are bad. I don't want to be somebody who's cliched. What they really mean is, I haven't studied my craft enough to know
Yes.
that what you're calling cliches and tropes are just the conventions of that particular genre.
That's correct.
It's how you use them and make them different for your specific story is important. But you cannot do a love story without certain tropes.
That's exactly right. And romance
Lovers have to argue a bit. They have to go head to head.
Yeah,
they have to have their first kiss. There's all these different things.
romance is highly scripted.
Yes.
And it's you must conform to that frequency, and yet it is the number one selling genre in
What's one of the
commercial
most
fiction.
popular movie channels? Hallmark.
Hallmark, absolutely.
And yet it's the same
Kill
damn
me
story.
That's right. But there's a reason people
I said,
want
kill
that.
me now.
Yeah. People
But it
want
sells.
That. It sells, and that's and there's a reason for that, and it is somewhat restricting. But when you work your way through that, I think you're exactly right, Robert. The magic is in, and here's the talent. Hopefully, is doing it different and better and clearer and aha-ing than many of.
See, that's
your
why I don't like to
competitors.
call it restrictive, because it's like, a lot of us here are comic book fans, and I can't stand a writer or a creative team that will come in and basically crap all over everything that's gone before. We say, well, that's too constricting. I can't be creative. It's like, no, you don't want to tell a story that's a Superman story or a Captain America story. You want to tell your story and change the character to fit it, because that's where you got hired to be. You have to tell a story that is consistent.
Right.
That makes you be creative. It doesn't restrict
It
you.
forces you actually to be a hell of a lot better.
All right. On that note, let's hear what David Weber had to say about why characters matter.
Ah,
I
excellent.
think
Oh,
this
okay.
falls right into there.
Good.
Now, he made 6 bullet points there, and of course, my note taking is not per se quotes, but the first one to come up is character function. What is the function of this character?
Yeah.
That's what you were just hitting on. Don't try to make it something else. Let the character be itself, basically. And really, that gets to all of them. What are the pillars of that character? I mean, their faith, their honor, their commitments. What do they believe in? Stay true to them. What is the environment of the character? How does that change them, focus them? How did it develop them if you go back in earlier years? The internal geography of the character. So their thought process matters. How do they arrive at points? How do they arrive at conclusions? Is it logical? Is it emotional? What's the process? Access to the character. Well, you might ask, what does that mean?
Yeah, I
what
was
is
about
access
to.
to the character? Can that character be accessed? Is people able to connect with them and
Right.
so
How do you-
Understand
how do
them,
you
relate
your
with them.
other
How do you
characters in the
relate?
book have access to that character and their development. It comes from both sides on that, not
Yeah.
just one. It's what's internally happening in the book too. And play fair with the character. That goes exactly back to your last point, trying to make their story fit your story. Play fair with the character. Let the character be themselves once you create them, and let them develop. Because characters will develop on their own.
Oh, hell
If you let
yes.
them run, they will be writing a scene for you, and you think, I didn't want that. And they're saying, shut up and let it ride.
Well, that is exactly where I'm at currently. I'm working on the 3rd novel in my series, and I'm going through the synopsis phase, and I really wasn't sure exactly where I was going to go. And one of my characters has ended up writing the last 4 chapters in a way I had not planned, because I know him well enough now that, of course, he's going to do it this way. It has to be this way.
Yeah.
And it's taking you into a place that it fits my general idea of where we're going, but I would have never dreamed that this was how this was going to work, because I've built in the flaws. I've built in his approach. I've built in the way he looks at things, his weak spots. He's got to play the hero, especially when it comes to women. It's just a thing. And wow, it's I'm hoping anyway, brought about some really good conflict and visceral moments, which in my genre, the espionage thriller, you got to have them. Going back to those
And
tropes.
I tell you what, Weber is he's one of the best at characters, in my opinion. Partially that's because he tends to write series, so he knows whereof he speaks.
Yes.
I could think of the Honor Harrington character, and come up with specific things for each one of those bullet points that you talked about. Especially that last one.
Examples during his talk with all these, usually in the honor universe,
Yeah.
of course.
And, because that's a character that he had planned to kill off a long time ago. But the story didn't. He couldn't do it. Well, one of the fans would have hunted him down and strung him up. But it worked better. And then also by collaborating with other authors, it changed the direction of
Yes,
where he was
and
going.
now that you mention that, that goes to his legacy talk. He already has plans for when something happens where he can no longer write due to mental or physical health or something, or passes away. The Honor Harrington universe will continue out with the writers he's been co-writing with. He's groomed a couple people already to carry on the story even after he's gone in the fashion that he wants it to be.
Yes, unfortunately, one of his actually, I think maybe more than one, but I think both David Drake and Eric Flint have passed, and they were two of his primary collaborators.
He outlived his successors.
But he's got a couple other he's been working with.
Yeah.
too.
So, yeah.
But especially Eric Flint is a great loss to the community, writing community. He's another one that's fantastic with characters. But anyways, so what did Superstars? Because I know it was there was a lot of, you seem to talk about there's a lot of craft related stuff and some of it the business side with what they talked about. But was there anything said about what we were talking about earlier with the gatekeepers and how all of that has changed and worked?
There are panels, of course, that discusses the major powers that be up in New York and so forth. And a lot of authors, those that started out as original authors in the old system, are no longer, there's very few that go by just the old system. More of them is a mix of self-publishing and publishing through houses and smaller publishers, and even starting up their own publishing houses, which a prime example is Kevin J. Anderson did that. He's got his own house going, and he brings a lot of novelists and stuff in, people he knows, people he doesn't know, people he mentors through his classes that he's teaching. The course there at Western University, they take and get submissions for short stories. The first time you go to Superstores, you're allowed to submit 2 short stories to his classes, and he uses those for examples, and the ones that make it get published, come out in the book.
Nice.
Year.
Yeah, there you
Nice.
So you got a couple nice incentives for that to work on that. And, you know, it's like he said, there's too many options to put all your eggs in one basket out that way.
Yep, absolutely.
So would you say that the gatekeeper system as we know it today is crumbling or even falling?
It has definitely changed and is morphing into something different than it has been before.
I think you're always going to have those gatekeepers.
Yeah.
But they just won't have the power that they once had?
Are the gatekeepers, this is a point of inquiry, are the gatekeepers now human, or are they turning more to AI to scan?
Ooh, he mentioned that nasty thing he just called Satan into this group on writing.
That's right.
Beelzebub.
AI is not something that's well looked upon in a lot of circles these days.
Well, I think he's talking about for the evaluation.
For the
yeah,
gatekeepers.
but no, an AI program is not to that effect that it can successfully pick and choose like that anymore yet.
And I think most gatekeepers would not want to cede that power.
Yeah, because because it's involved with power completely.
Yeah.
Basically, when we say gatekeepers, you're talking about the editors and
The acquisition
publishers,
editors.
acquisition editors at the Big 5 publishing, which is Big 3, Big 5, Big 4.
Well,
Whatever.
and even at the smaller publishers, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, there's always a gatekeeper if you're not a self-published author.
Yeah, and some of them are very easy to work with.
Yes.
But at the Big 5, everybody wants in, and
That's where the biggest money
that's where the
up
money's
front
at.
comes in.
So
That's true.
And I understand the bar is going to be higher, but there are the problem with that is as Martin was saying earlier, they've decided every book must be profitable. So the structure is almost cookie cutter from one to the other.
Well, they're
genre.
making an investment in you, and they need to have return.
That's correct. So
on
it
that
have to go with
investment.
what we know sells.
Whereas in the past, they're not. They're investing one editor's time, basically, and they're not investing all of this promotion and everything.
Yeah,
like
but
they
you know
do
what?
now.
They're not doing as much promotion as you might think.
That's right. That's come.
No, and that
There was a time, but
I
you're
can
right.
give you a story on that one too.
Please do.
Yeah.
That Kevin talked about. an older author, I'm not even going to note sex of them, came to him and said, I'd like to work with you. He thought, oh, this is great. I know this person, been around for years and everything. And then he starts digging into checking them out to see what kind of social presence they have.
Ooh.
Well, this person does no self-promotion socially at all and refuses to do what he found out. So guess who he did not bring into the fold?
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's right. You all that being said about gatekeepers, you have to be willing to play the game to a certain degree. You have to do that.
Yeah.
Unless they think they have really captured lightning in a bottle, brand new authors have to do almost all of their own promotion. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're taking out Amazon ads or anything like that, but if they want to get on the radio or whatever,
Start a podcast.
they've got to arrange all that stuff themselves.
One
They've
of the-
got to run their own website.
One great example of a recent success that did get the backing and a huge figure is author T.J. Newman, who wrote the book 3 years ago called Falling, about a aircraft that is crashing. And she was a pilot, a flight attendant on Red Eyes, and she wrote this. She's a young lady, and it was a mega seller that summer in 22, I think it was. And she's even released the second one. And this is at a 6-figure advance from one of the majors.
That's almost unheard of.
It's almost
for a new
unheard
author,
of for
yeah.
a brand spanking new author, never before tried. I read about the first 3 chapters, and she opens with a dream. Which to me I just cringed at that obvious trope, but she got it. Whatever reason, somebody believed in her, and it's sold.
How's the second one selling?
Not as well, from what I
I
understand.
wonder if the time that she put out the first one had something to do with things going on throughout our country.
And that
the
is
world.
correct. I think some of this is capturing what lightning in a bottle, as you say, for the times. I did not think she was a bad author by any means. Please don't misunderstand me. But it's kind of like, how did this one get picked? Because to me, it seemed very pedestrian.
But you know what? That's an interesting. Sorry.
No, please go ahead. And then I got something.
Okay, I was gonna say, but that whole idea of a story that is set, a novel, not even just a short story, but a novel is set with a plane that is crashing, falling out of the sky.
That's right, yeah.
That's a pretty unique take.
You kind of know how it ends.
Well, you kind of know how it ends.
Do you?
But you may not.
You know how part of it will end.
Yeah, that's
But they may pull out at the last second.
No, they don't, and the sequel picks up after the end. And I think it's a
Interesting.
one-word title. I think it's like Drowning. Or
So not everybody dies right off.
that's right. Yeah,
You
so
said
it's over
pull
thing.
out.
So,
Yeah,
I'm 12.
Word boner.
different kind of word.
skip a bit, brother.
But my
The
point is, though,
Imperator's influence isn't always positive.
Well,
isn't. I mean,
Never.
never. Yeah. But my point is, though, that's such a unique take. I can see why.
They went with it.
They
yeah.
went
Yeah.
with it, but also
Yeah.
maybe that they let things like, because one of the things that you'll learn if you take some basic writing lessons or you find online courses, they'll tell you, do not start with a dream. Do not start where the main character wakes up and goes about his day from the very beginning.
That's right.
Things like that, because they're cliched, they're pedestrian. But the dream, I think, if you do it well, you can get away with, because the dream can drop you right into action.
Well, that's exactly why she did it, because the dream is right in the heart of an action. But
See, there you go. That's why she could do it.
that's right. But
None of
it
anybody
turns
else's
out to be a
rules are
lie.
written in stone for everybody. I
Exactly.
Mean, there are exceptions
That's
to
exactly
everybody.
right. And the book was very, very successful. But it's kind of, how did this, what did she do that made that happen? And
Sounds like it was the hook,
it was
personally.
the hook, the luck. She's not a bad writer by any means, but she's one out of millions that attempt to get through that gate, and yet she did. And I'm just saying, it is possible. Martin, you wanted to.
Well, I wanted to cede the start here to Brother Andre, and then I want to have.
Cajun mentioned the importance of self-promotion, and I recently listened to a book on tape that was heavily promoted and sold, and I was very disappointed in the product that was produced. It was Britney Spears' book, The Woman Within Me.
Which supposedly sold gazillions.
Gazillions, and it was poorly written.
So excellent promotion, not so excellent product.
but
Yeah,
you know
but-
what?
Even
but
though it had a
still-
ghostwriter, I'm sure it did.
I think there was someone to help her. And
That's
because-
essentially what
but
that is.
here's the problem: if there was a professional writer associated with it, they should be fired.
Yeah.
Probably a friend or somebody.
yeah,
That's
you know what?
not
That's
unusual.
yeah. This.
Why should they be fired? It sold 1 million copies. So
Therein lies the question. It
And-
depends on what your value system is.
yeah, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. You know, I've seen some horrible crap published by the Big Five, stuff that is just like
This
stuff
would
sold.
fall in that category.
Yeah, it's sold.
Martin.
So, when you discuss, a new author working on promotion and how to not outflank the gatekeepers, but to bootstrap into the gatekeepers, there's apparently a big scandal that an author who had a contract and a book coming out was going on like social media and slamming rivals.
Ooh, bad play, bad play.
I remember hearing something about
So
this.
she was hitting these these rival books in her genre, and
She was review bombing them.
yes,
That's it.
review
Yeah.
bomb, and then promoting what she had coming out anonymously,
Yes,
like
yes.
under the same like
creating fake
username.
accounts and
Yeah,
leaving a
sock
ton of
puppets,
reviews.
yeah.
Yes. So, and of course, the genre is all tied into trans stuff and L
LGBTQ double plus.
plus.
Yeah, yeah.
But the other authors that were getting these horrible reviews began putting this together.
Right. Sooner or later, somebody always figures it
It's
out.
like, oh, these
It's a
same
small writing
accounts
community, yeah.
are putting these same reviews, negative ones on these books and positive on this one author's.
Yes.
And they figured it out and went to the publisher, and the publisher pulled the deal.
That's right.
Pulled
Absolutely.
the deal,
Yep.
and the book isn't coming out, and it's a big scandal. And of course, the author was like, "Well, I'm going into rehab, and I
Yeah.
apologize." And
That's almost like a get out of jail free.
yeah,
card.
so it was like but it's like, wow. But it shows now that, again, this idea that you're talking about, you got to promote yourself. This is how active you've got to be. Put your stuff out
Yeah,
there
there's
on these.
There is much truth to the fact, like you were
I thought it was
saying, Cajun.
fascinating.
Do you have to live on social media? Some say yes, some say no. Do you have to have a presence on social media? Absolutely. You cannot
There's a
do this
difference
without.
between promotion and denigration of others.
Absolutely, that's correct.
Yeah.
And there are ways to do that in many ways. That I'll give you one lady that I really admire. She's an independent publisher. Her name is Arabella Federico. She has published 2 books under her own publishing imprint. They are I forget what she calls it. It's a cross between Sailor Moon and space fantasy. Totally not in my genre, but I ended up coming across her on Instagram. She's out of Seattle, and she's a young
Created her
lady.
own genre.
Yeah, a
the
young
sound
lady, and she could not get published, so she created her own imprint to do so, and she's published her first 2, and she is on it literally every freaking day. But she does it well. She puts herself out there. She grafts herself into the promotion, and I did a little research on her publishing company that she created, and basically the intention was to take down the gatekeepers in the publishing industry. She states this right on their website, which just kind of tells me that they're not thinking beyond that narrow stream.
No, and they never have.
And they never have, but it's really narrow now because nobody would even take a chance on her. And I've read synopses of her. I mean, yeah, it's a very niche market. It's a very niche genre, but why can't it have its space, especially if you do it well? And she has. The 3rd book is getting ready to come out.
And that was the whole point of self-publishing.
That's essentially
Find a
what
place
she
and meet others and provide
essentially
a product.
what she
Yeah.
did. And she must do this full time because literally she's on there every single day.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I
it's successful.
a lot of the stuff that should be done, you have to almost have to have no other job.
And she does it. I mean, I will give her credit for the quality that she does. I don't know what her sales are like or any of that sort of stuff. And of course, it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble, the whole schmear. And again, it's not my genre, so I'm not going to read it. But I probably will purchase it just to support her at some point.
Yeah. So
Well, on that note, I want my favorite time of profession to come along on a 24-hour basis.
Yeah, you had to stop us because we will keep going.
Oh yes, I know.
Yes.
I know.
Well, writing is probably the one subject that we could totally skip over bourbon break without realizing it.
That's right.
This is true. We've got a very unique bourbon for this one. And who wants to say the name of it? I'll do it then. Cock of the Walk. Yes, boo me for that one. No, this is a private label bottled privately from one of the local farms around here. It's very unique that it has corn in it that probably came from the ranch out here a few years back.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Cajun's very own bourbon seeds.
That's right. So it's very unique. I
good.
personally am enjoying it.
Very
Me
much so.
too.
Oh, I think it's killer.
It's got a
absolutely
lovely
killer.
amber color.
Well, the
Imperator, what's your sniffer there say?
Very fruity, citrusy kind of off of it. I don't know if it was up to me based off of. Yeah, it would be something that would overly appeal to me. It reminds me of some of the more citrusy drinks.
Interesting.
It almost comes off to me as like it's pre-mixed with like a pineapple juice or something. It's
Really?
Interesting.
Well, I
say,
have
we
a
haven't-
little story about this distillery.
Yeah, please.
This lady out of California come in, says, plenty and plenty and plenty of money. I have no idea where it all came from. But she started buying up barrels and barrels and barrels of bourbon back when we had the slump. And she's been sitting on them for years. She's bought old brand names such as Waddy Boone, which comes out of this distillery.
That's right.
Cock of the Walk was an original thing. And these are blended on a lot of these older whiskeys with newer corn that's distilled too.
Okay. All right.
In fact, somebody told me recently that she's been sitting on a lot of barrels of Pappy that didn't sell very well back when we had the slump
Wow.
years ago. That's
Yes.
going into some of these.
A very wise woman, it seems.
oh.
Yes.
She's blending Pappy.
Yeah.
Like I say, I was told that. I don't know if it's true or not.
It's
but
Preservation Distillery, correct? Did
I
get that right?
believe so.
That's right. Which puts out the Waddy Boone brand, which we have sampled. I mean, I'm sitting here looking at it up here on your shelf, Cajun. I have a bottle that you gifted me that it's named after an ancestor of mine again, but it's
Surely not.
surely not.
How can that possibly be?
Yeah. But this one here is very different from that. That one has a stronger bite, if I recall correctly. This is very, very smooth.
The Waddy's stronger. I think it's more reminiscent of the time the original came out.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
You know, maybe didn't age as long. It had more of a bite to it.
Yeah, I remember
But now, here's the thing. Who wants to take a guess at what proof this is if you haven't looked?
I
It's
looked. So.
I looked. It's like 112,
Look at it.
114.
He ruins the game.
Yeah, I was going to say, but
It
I
was
would not
good.
have guessed 112 off the top of
no,
my
I'm
head.
sitting
No.
here now. I've let it bloom, but this is a smooth,
Yeah.
kissing
I mean,
bourbon.
I tried it before it even started melting.
Well, you know, before it started, the ice started melting. I would have guessed a higher proof.
Yes.
I don't
but
think I would have
now
now
that
past 100, 102 or so.
yeah, maybe I don't know. I might have gone a little higher, but it definitely you could tell it was a much higher proof than the first two that we had done today.
Oh yeah, because it still retains a bit of its spark, it's a bit of its oomph, a bit of
Yeah.
its push.
But you know, once it's bloomed,
yeah.
it definitely does not taste like a 112 proof.
So I mean, it's very similar in proof to the old Granddad 114 that we've had.
Yeah.
But I think a ton smoother.
Yes,
More
yes.
flavorful.
Very much
Well,
so.
okay on this is much more complex.
I mean, this dude
Yeah.
is, to me, this is killer stuff. I love this sort of apple pie flavor it almost
That's very
has.
good. Yeah,
This
yeah.
baked apple.
There's a sweetness
baked,
to
baked
it.
apple cobbler sweetness to it.
It's not a peppery thing at all.
No, but
No.
it's not overpoweringly sweet.
Oh, yeah.
It's a little bit balanced.
It's not
with
Kool-Aid.
with a touch of pepper to it, but
Yeah.
very very balanced, nice and complex. A little bit oaky, mature, flavor to it, and I think it's killer.
If you take
Absolutely
10
killer.
sips of this bourbon, you'll get 8 different flavors that are pronounced. It has so many different layers of complexity, and maybe that's from all the blending that it happens.
Well, yeah,
Perhaps,
that's a very good
That-
theory.
that-
Yeah,
that-
Well, like I say, I don't know how much blending happened in this particular bottle. I do know there's a lot of blending that goes on over there.
yeah, we passed by them on the way out here.
Yeah.
Robert and Andre.
Very small.
Yeah, we. I don't think I pointed them out. It was right at the Bluegrass Parkway.
I mean, they brew a batch. You're probably looking at 4 to 5 barrels in a batch when they make over there.
Okay.
Yeah, blending used to be the main thing, as I understand it. But with the craft stuff going on,
It kind of got a dirty connotation for a while, but it's come back.
well,
And-
you know, Bardstown Bourbon, they're almost entirely.
That's right, and it's and they have, and you just need a few folks that do it very well. And that respect the process, and it goes. And Bardstown Bourbon Company is very good at that. Yes,
And you know, one of the things that
Her Majesty
that,
toured there just a few weeks ago. Yeah,
one of the things
I
I like
did not
about
too long back too last year.
yeah, and
All
she was very, very pleased. Yes.
Yeah, I think if you're blending, you're probably going to get a more consistent bourbon because you can alter your mix to get the profile.
Yeah, if you know what you're
From-
doing and you're very deliberate.
Yeah, you know, from batch to batch. And I don't know that, you know, all the ones that we have called comfort bourbons are necessarily blended, but I like the consistency of certain bourbons from bottle to bottle so that I know when I pick up a bottle of 1792 small batch, it's going to be the same as the last bottle or
Yeah,
the bottle of
and
Woodford.
that's what most bourbon distillers are looking for. But within some of them like a little bit of variance.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with
And
that.
nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
But you can still tell. Oh yeah, this is Booker's. This is Old
Yeah,
Forester.
there's
this
a
And
is-
you realize
Woodford
that
on it.
when they bring down the Woodford or the Four Roses or what, those all blended barrels, Yellowstone. They're blended from the same warehouse from different barrels at different levels
Yep.
to achieve a continuation of their taste that you associate.
you
with that
you have
line.
to. Otherwise, if you're using a single barrel for your bottling, they'll all be different. You know,
Which some distillers
some like that. Some want that. Yeah.
And almost all the big names have some kind of single barrel program that they are running.
That's right.
Because for one thing, you can charge more for it.
Well, yeah, the term single barrel became niche where it was interpreted as being better than a blended, but I think a blended is a more uniform product.
Yeah, that's and
It
so
can
you,
be,
You
yeah.
get both. Yeah, and neither is a dirty word. No matter, although I'm sure there are snobs on both sides that will say, "Oh man, only this one is a proper one."
Yeah. I mean, I've heard some people denigrate the idea of blending, but I think that's, you know,
That's silly.
Hogwash.
as long as it's all bourbon, it's hard to go bad. I mean,
it.
you know, we know it can happen.
But it is the exception, not the rule.
Yes.
Yes.
So give us-
Basically, the biggest thing, keep it out of the sunlight.
Well, yeah, that's true. That's
Direct sunlight will hurt it faster than
Yeah,
anything.
That's right.
Give us the name of this one again.
Cock at the walk, mate. Without the mate.
Of the walk.
That's right.
Cock of the walk.
Yeah, that's right.
I thought I'd put a little English spin on it.
Yeah.
I think it's absolutely killer and tremendous. So
Yeah.
Highly
I kind of
recommend.
wish I had
Strong
just
recommend.
put water in it rather than the ice. It was. I think it had a better flavor when it was warmer.
Yeah, when it's closer to really.
Yeah.
it does not give it that real heavy, high proof flavor at all.
No, it definitely.
Well, when
Great.
it was neat, I asked if it was a rye on my initial taste because it was higher.
There does feel like there's a little bit of peppery taste at the beginning.
Like I say, I can't tell you what the mash bill on it. It was a private selection.
And we are grateful that we are able to partake. Yes, indeed.
Yes.
So there's no way to look it up to see. This is actually a single barrel.
Yeah, it even gives the barrel
Came
number.
barrel
on there.
number 2.
Yeah, that's right. We are honored to be able
So
to.
this one is not a blend. I can't answer that question.
Well, then it sat in the barrel for a long time because there's some complexity of flavor.
Amen to that. Yes.
Well, you know, we've discovered that that's not even necessarily the case.
No.
A lot of
Fine-tuning the
distillers.
environment.
Yeah, a lot of distillers have come up with ways to simulate the aging process by moving it on the river, you know, back and forth a short distance. Helps the bourbon slosh in the barrel.
Sloshing.
Turning the
playing-
barrels, the temperature of the rick house.
Right, playing music.
Vibration.
The heavy
Playing
bass.
music.
Playing a
Vibration.
heavy
because
bass.
The sound vibrations will force things to shake, and it's amazing. It's
Technology has caught up with the bourbon
Yeah,
industry.
the science that is here.
In and out of
is-
the wood. In
that's
and out
right.
of
Well,
the
I
wood.
mean,
You
well,
doing
and I
what there, boy?
Hold up.
I wasn't going to
Now,
say
one,
it, but I
one
did
of the
think
things
it.
that I
Yes.
think is going to change rapidly, and it's already being adapted in the wine industry, and I sent you all an article on it, is the stainless steel barrels where you put the staves inside of it. So you're getting more surface area, you're getting more consistency, you can mix barrel types within your stuff.
But you're not getting the flame part of the barrel.
Yeah, you
Yes,
are.
it's already
no,
charred.
no, you
Unless
char,
it's
get,
all
but,
you
but
char
you're
the
also getting
staves.
char the outside of the staves too.
Yes. Yeah,
all
you charge the whole
dimensions.
all dimensions of it.
Oh, okay. So
Because
yeah,
you're
you
not-
would then. You
But
would get
and
more
you can
surface.
control how much
Yeah.
of what
Yeah.
type. You can mix a cherry with an oak with an apple.
Well,
and
that
all
breaks
sorts of
the
different
legal
things.
definition of bourbon,
Yeah.
so I don't know that she'll be. You
White
might see
oak.
that in a secondary barreling, but
Well,
you'd have to
I
change the definition.
No, I mean you don't have. I mean, you don't. It wouldn't necessarily be a bourbon,
Right, that's
per
what I'm
se.
saying. Yeah.
but yeah,
It'd be,
but
Be a whiskey.
But they're doing this with wine to allow more consistency and more scientific control over what's going on with the aging process.
The purist in me cringes at the word stainless steel barrel.
No, I mean the way they've done this, it's actually scientifically very.
Well, let's look at it this way. If it becomes successful enough, it gathers money and power, somebody will change the definition by law.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Absolutely.
yeah.
Which oft our stage has shown.
So back to Superstars writing
Yes.
symposium event thingy.
All right. Well, I mentioned a minute ago David Weber and talking about legacy planning, and one of the best ways, too, was set up an S Corp when you get started. But let's hit a few highlights, since all of us are at various stages and so forth and have intellectual properties now, basically. I'm just going to hit some high notes and we can kind of discuss it. He says, of course, know what you have produced and protect it, of course, is the
Yes.
best way to look at it.
Okay.
Who can be the curator for what you have been produced? Who can produce new content, which he has Hollow and Pope, I believe he's been working with some. You recognize those two names?
Pope, I think. I don't know about the other one,
I
but
think Pope, continue his Honorverse series. Be very unclear. Excuse me. Be very clear on who has authority for direction of the books, not just who has the clearance to write, but who has the authority to direct what the direction should be, which is not always the same person.
right. It needs to be the equivalent of a showrunner.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Of course, be trademarked when you publish, so that it is your legal property. Let your feelings be known and documented. Document any feelings you have about your property for future uses, such as media, as in Frank Herbert's do. Being produced for TV, movies, what have you. I like this one too. And this is more of a process thing, not necessarily a legacy thing. I love this point. Never ever get to the point where you don't listen to your editor.
What'd you
Amen.
say?
Ah,
You
yes.
never get to the point where you don't listen to
He was
your
trying to be
editor.
cute.
Yeah, absolutely. A great editor is gold. I mean,
Kind of a partner in
that's right.
Exactly.
And, yeah, exactly.
That is
And that
exactly
an editor
right.
usually is a function of your publisher. But essentially, I mean, sometimes it may be a team, it may be whatever.
Well, and let's differentiate. You've got multiple kinds of editors.
Oh, yes.
That's correct.
Essentially, I think what he's referring to is more the developmental editor, because your copy editor, that's it. Well, first of all, if you don't listen to the copy editor,
You're
to say-
dumb.
that's really stupid.
That's right.
Capitalize the first letter of every sentence, et cetera, et cetera, et
Listen to
cetera.
all your editors.
Yes, listen to all of them.
Yeah, but
And if you have a problem working with that editor, then find one you can work with.
right, and not just one that's going to be a kiss your ass kind of.
Right, exactly. Somebody that'll push you, make you better, so
oh
forth.
yeah, that's exactly the trust level is essential. No question as you do
You
that.
got to have somebody that will challenge your assumptions and your decisions without being offensive.
Right, and that falls into this next statement. Every storyteller needs a sounding board.
Yep.
Not necessarily your editor to bounce ideas off and toss it back and forth.
Well, absolutely.
We all look at each other.
I say we have the
We've all-
brotherhood.
we have a brotherhood here that has done that I mean, literally, we just did it last
night.
That's right, because I had a technical question that I posed to the guys. And
Yes, and as I was complaining to Brother Andre and Francis outside a few minutes ago before we started this one, I was really getting pissed off at these guys because I was trying to work on my own book and my phone was blowing up with message after message after message.
The question, I was stunned. Every one of you guys came in with lots of helpful stuff. It really is. I mean, it was just a logistics question. It's about a firearm, about wounds and things like that. And you guys jumped on that like a duck on a June bug, as they used to say out here.
Yeah.
And solved the problem very quickly with lots of input from lots of places.
You kicked around a lot of options.
I was going to say, we didn't just
a
solve
lot
the
of
problem. We
places.
gave you various options.
Yeah.
We
We
were
worked-
you were
different
looking at.
ways you could go
Thoroughly
with it.
investigated and pummeled that expired equine until we finally came out with the right answer. And I'll give the Imperator credit for the actual final way of doing it, because he himself experienced a wounding via a firearm. So that put
That
him right
probably
to the
wasn't
top
his
of the
first.
list.
A couple of
That wasn't
times.
his first, I'm sure.
That's
Yeah.
right. That way,
Wasn't
he
my
was able
first, wouldn't
to
be my
cut
last.
through it with personal experience.
And amazingly enough, it wasn't like an aggravated husband shooting at him or anything.
No.
That's
He
true.
shot
Or an
at
aggra-
himself.
or his own wife.
I was going to say his
Yeah.
wife would be the first one, because
Didn't get it.
Yeah.
Gluteus Maximus climbing out the window.
Yeah, yeah. An aggrieved husband would have to stand in line, wouldn't he? Yeah.
All
Yes, it was a
right.
self-inflicted, but
Ricochet. It was a ricochet.
that still counts as self-inflicted.
That's right. Continue, Katie.
Okay. Well, we kind of said this, but need to think about planning early, no matter when you're starting, and that your intent is known to repeat. Nice comment here to think about. Most major literary universes die with the passing of the author.
I would understand that.
Prepare, prepare, prepare. Story is secondary. Make sure whoever you choose to keep it going can do your voice.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'll give you a great example of this too, and you know this. Edward S. Ahrens, who wrote the Assignment series from like 55 until he passed away in like 86, 20 years of like almost over 40 books that sold gazillions, 20 million copies for the whole series for Fawcett Books. And they were excellent. I mean, you've read the whole series. He passes away, and because these things still sell so well, they picked up a ghostwriter and named it after the guy's brother. To continue, but they ran 4 and stopped because it just didn't have it. It's because and those later books that they tried to make that work with, some of it the trends were changing and things like that. It's just the gatekeeper, the guy who created it, only he knows that character so well, and anything else was noticeably just not there.
Yeah, I would argue that the story and characters will die with the author. You can get someone to write in your voice and continue the story, but any attuned reader will know the difference.
That's right.
I remember what comes to mind is Rex Stout and
Oh yes, yes.
His character
Nero Wolfe.
Yeah, it was continued in the 90s and up to now by an author by the name of Robert Goldsboro.
Yeah.
And it's still a wonderful story in the same genre, but you can definitely tell what was written by Rex Stout.
There was only one Stout. That's
Yeah.
right. He's one of the perfect examples too of you can't go home again. Ian Fleming. Goodness knows that John Gardner did a spectacular job in the 80s of continuing the character, but it was not Fleming. It was not. He wrote about I think 11 books of James Bond, and they were good. But I remember buying the first one thinking, wow, this is new. And it was good, but it was not Fleming.
No.
And it's just
But
it's
there's
just
the
a thing.
thing. Don't knock perfection for good enough and sit on it
Oh, yeah.
forever. It was a good story. He wrote a good story. No, it wasn't Fleming, but it continued.
Oh, yeah.
the character
It sold
of
well.
New
I
adventures.
mean, I have the whole series. It's
you know
sold
what?
very, very well.
Even the same author, because authors change,
Right.
can write. Now, granted, usually this takes where you have a lot of time in between books, but the same author can write in a series, and when you get to the end, it feels like it's by an entirely different person than it
Oh,
was
hell
when
yeah.
they started.
Is that because the
Aaron's
author
was
has
big.
changed or the characters?
Well, because
it can be. It can be because their outlook on things have changed. It can be age. It can be all kinds of things. I use Isaac Asimov's Foundation series as the prime example of this.
Yeah.
He wrote the first 3, in the 50s into the early 60s, And then when he finally revisited them starting in the 80s, everything he wrote seemed like a betrayal of his own philosophy that he stated in, personally as well as in the books.
Yeah,
And it
which
just-
was one of the foundational, no pun intended, pieces that made those things popular.
right. And it just seems so out of left field. And so, you can have that where this doesn't feel like it should be.
Because he returned to it so much later at a different
And
place.
that's part of it.
Aaron's was similar with his series too. By the time you read the last one, he'd gotten very formulaic. Only because, and doing a little research on this, Fawcett told him you need to do it this way because these sell. So lean into this, lean into this, lean into this. He was granted less freedom, but they're paying him guzu money because these things are selling. They're 20 million copies.
A perfect example of continuation and stuff going wrong would be Douglas Adams.
Oh yes,
Hitchhiker's Guide series. You had 3 wonderful books. Then the publisher pushed and pushed and pushed for a 4th. His heart wasn't in it. And you ended up with Mostly Harmless, which was, to be fair, a horrible book compared to the others.
yeah.
And then once he passed, his wife came back, got another writer, wanted to go on with it.
Yeah.
And God, that went into the tank.
Well, there was only one master. Adams was, well known as
He
being
was.
that good. Yeah,
He was, but only for what he had his heart in.
that's true. Some of his Doctor Who stuff, the early stuff he did was fantastic. And as he eventually got, he and the BBC went to loggerheads. Some of his later stuff was just didn't have it. His heart was out of it.
Yeah, part of the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say one of the things you're going to see happening more and more is as you've got these prolific authors, you're going to end up with they're going to train the AI on what they've done before,
Oh God.
and you're going to get their voice.
Which could be good, could be bad.
Could be good, could be bad. I'm just not
Yeah.
And the
saying
law
what-
has not
what
even
it
begun
is,
to catch up
but
with that sort of
it's
thing.
going to start.
So, well, yeah, one of the things that to your point about Adams about the same author within a relatively short time frame.
Oh yeah, no, it was right in there.
Can change the tenor of the story. Part of that, I think, is the difference in storytelling. So Fleming, with his just ungodly number of books, along with the Mac Bolins and all those were a very specific genre of books that were. They were a series, but they're not a series in the way we tend to think of them today.
Oh, you're exactly right. By the time Fleming wrote Goldfinger, which was in '59, he'd done like 6 books. That, in my opinion, was his last original book. Everything else,
There's that too.
Yeah, because by that time he's writing for the market.
Yes,
And
well,
he's running
he's
out
got
of
a
ideas.
formula,
Yeah,
and
it's,
he's
it's
got to
very
hit that.
formulaic, and a
Whereas-
lot of his originality went away. Thunderball had some of that, which was in '61. 4 Years Only was in '60. It had a collection of stories he had on the shelf. '61 was Thunderball was about. He co-wrote that to try and reinvigorate the character. But after that, it's kind of like, well, what do we want to do now? It's almost like he's drunk and he's sitting there writing. Well, let's try
It's
this.
like, why do you keep, Frank Herbert? Why do you keep writing those books?
That's right.
'Cause they keep paying me.
The Spy Who Loved Me was absolutely, completely against type. It was a very experimental book. It's nothing like the movie, and it's only because he'd sold the others that they let him do it, because it should not have ever gotten published.
And that
it was
kind of
so different.
That kind of genre is even though it's a series, they're standalones.
Yes.
There's very little. All right, character starts here and ends up way
James
over
Bond
here.
never changes. I mean,
James
that's
Bond
actually
never
become a
changes.
trope.
It's always a status quo ante at the end of every
That's
story.
exactly right.
Well, and a lot of those same kind of. I think Francis, you've said that they called that genre at the time. It doesn't exist as a separate genre anymore. Men's Adventure.
Men's Adventure. It
And-
began there, but it really Mike Bolan really started that in '69, and through the '60s and the '70s and '80s it was huge, and in the
Right,
'90s
but again,
it peters out.
They're standalone. You can pick up any one of those books, and
And
you
most
don't
of
have
them
to have read any of the others.
Most
for the
of them are
part.
ghostwritten.
Right.
That's a guy. The guys are making money, and some of these guys are very good.
Sure.
Many of them ain't worth squat, but these guys are making livings.
But they
turning
turn
these
them out and they'll buy.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nowadays, when people talk about a series, it's much more like the David Weber series.
That's right. Yeah. A
Where
true
it is-
series.
One character
Yep.
and their ancillary characters, their cast, their background
posse.
characters, their loves, their parents, whatever. and takes them from a point in time until death,
You're exactly right.
or until whatever a part of the story that is the point is resolved.
And Edward S. Aarons was an anomaly during that time because he wrote the same character himself. John D. McDonald, same thing with Travis McGee. He started the same thing and he carries it all the way through his end, and lets the character grow. Even though each book's a standalone, he's not afraid to do any of that. Those were the exceptions. Most of the times you don't get that, but there's a reason those books have continued to enjoy either still being read or at least respected.
Well, and I think that's the difference between those standalone series.
Yeah.
Even though it's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
But for those standalone series and something like a Weber or Eric Flint's 1632, or the books you're writing, the stories that I'm telling, we view them differently as like there's a story.
Oh yeah, there's
and we're just telling
a meta arc.
We're telling an episode in the life of the character, and
It's more of a serial.
It's a serial, but I think it's intended to be a little bit more sophisticated.
Oh yeah, well Jack Aubrey is the perfect example of that. Patrick O'Brien, who started writing Master and Commander in like '68.
Well, Sharps.
Sharps, absolutely. Bernard Cornwell has done the same thing. He's carried that character through history.
Exactly.
But of course, both of those characters are tied specifically to history. But Sharp does not change a whole lot. He does grow. But Aubrey and Stephen Maturin absolutely change from the beginning to the end, and that's really the whole. That's one of the reasons those books are still just idolized by so many folks, is because they are called the Aubriad. It's one story, and O'Brien did that deliberately to show the lives of these two characters, and sold gazillion copies. He's one that does it well,
and it lends itself to television,
well, very
and
much
to
so.
movies,
Yeah.
and so tying all that kind of stuff together. Obviously, the goal of it's the ironic goal of most authors today is not to sell 1 million books.
To get picked up by Netflix.
It's to get picked up by Netflix.
That's right. We hear that all the time. I mean, it sounds.
Well, it's
I mean,
changing technology and media out that way, which
which
one makes you money, and it's going to change going forward.
It is,
That's
and
right.
having that more sophisticated than a standalone series, as I called it, you're more likely to do that, and I think that's what readers have come to expect.
I mean, what's the next phase? Immersion with the goggles and so forth, where you're in the story,
virtual reality of some sort. Yeah,
Virtual reality of some
you remember
form
we
or
were
fashion.
talking with Tony from Hydra Press at Imaginarium, and he was very clear to me, and I suspect he was to you all because we were at different points. He says series is where it's at.
Yes.
Absolutely, that's where, if you want to be a successful writer, series is where by the time you've written 4 books, you might start to actually see a little bit of money.
Back catalog.
Back catalog. It's really what it's about. And that takes time, but it also takes sustainability in your creation of your characters. I get that. But it also takes a lot of persistence.
It does.
Stick
and
with
the
it.
series is even true on the nonfiction side of things.
Very much so. Yes, right.
If you're going to write multiple nonfiction books, it's better to have a theme that permeates all of them.
Yeah, well, Dan Jones is a great one for doing that because he's writing history, in English history. But, and we are big fans of him. He's written several all over the place, but now he's gotten to the point where he's known. When you see his name, Dan Jones, you know what you're going to get. And it's some very good stuff that he's done.
Yeah, very, very readable English history.
Yeah, Tom Holland, as you,
really
one of your
good.
favorites, is very much about that. Yeah,
David McCullough.
Yeah.
very much so. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
He's
he's a
one of the
storyteller.
grandfathers of that. Yeah.
McCullough, his 1776, I think, is one of the best
Yeah.
books on history that you will ever read because it is so accessible.
And McCullough is just good. He's just that talented. Too.
Even the boy who had to read that for a class really liked that. And he's generally not big into history, unfortunately. It's one of my failings as a parent.
Well, we do the best we can. But you should speak of your boy because you have accolades to give him.
So, yes. So I may have failed him in some ways. I did write by him in others. For instance, I once
At least
asked,
genetically.
Genetically, yes. I once asked him what the best all-around album was, and his answer,
Police Synchronicity?
absolutely.
Of course it was.
No hesitation.
Yes.
So that warmed the cockles of my fatherly heart. But as far as the other accolades, so the boy, as I like to call him, has applied to many different schools, and he's pretty much could go anywhere he wanted. The only school he did not get into, he got a provisional acceptance, or not a provisional acceptance, but a deferment. That's what they call it.
Yeah,
Because he applied to MIT. It's like,
Yeah.
we're full up on this round. After people decide, okay, I'm going to go here. Who's not going to go here? Slots will open up. You're free to. We'll take a look at you again in the fall or in the spring. I mean, but everywhere else has been accepted. Now at Bellarmine, which is our alma mater, everybody except for Brother Andre. I don't know how we let this guy in, but
I'm
He's
a
just a good guy.
hilltopper.
Oh boy.
It's from the state. It's from the state. That's right.
it's from the state. But anyways, they had they have a competition every year for their honors program. Used to be called Cardinal Section. when we
Yeah,
were all
as
there.
we remember.
Many,
yeah.
many moons ago. Yeah.
Many moons ago. It's now just called their honors program. And there were 136 people who from all over the country that competed this year, and the prizes were the top 5 got a all tuition, room and board scholarship. So basically, you pay nothing except your matriculation fee to get in and to go to school. The next 5 got a full tuition scholarship. If they want to pay, live on campus, they have to pay room and board themselves. The boy got one of the top 5.
Congratulations, sir.
Congratulations.
So I mean,
Yeah.
he is the literally, this is the cream of the crop. They basically wrote him nearly a $250,000 check to go to Bellarmine for 4 years. Not quite that, but pretty darn close.
And the good news is you don't have to.
And I don't have to. When my last payment to DeSales goes out in May, I immediately get a huge raise the following month. Because
Yes, I did the very same. That's
yes,
correct.
it is glorious.
Yes, when my young one, Indiana, went to EKU, it was amazing the amount of money that I got back.
Yes, but yes, great accolades to him,
Caps,
and
I
he
should
is
say.
really bought into Bellarmine. I mean, he is all in.
He better.
I was going to say after all we've talked
swords
about all
up.
this time, yeah, come on, yeah,
Well, yeah, swords up.
swords up. That's right. That's right.
But I mean, he's bought into it. And I mean, he's not a terribly social kid. Like many his age, he sits there and he plays video games online with his friends, and that's his social interaction. So it's kind of social. Sad, but so that he's not sad. I'm just quoting Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of Bellarmine event that is next weekend. I think it is. No, it's this weekend. And he was like, "Oh, I wasn't planning on going because I thought we were doing one of the family Easter events, but that family has COVID passing around, so they're putting it off."
Good
So,
idea, Lord.
He actually wants to go. And they have all kinds of swag they send out, and he's wearing that stuff all the time. And I'm telling you, it makes me so happy.
Warms the heart, eh?
It does. It does. Anyways, that's three of us at Bellarmine
Awesome.
to 2 at U of L. So Boo wins.
You just loved saying that, didn't you?
I
Good
do.
thing your wife doesn't listen.
Well, she knows. She knows.
I was going to say, I'm sure you've told her
and,
this.
Speaking of U of L, eldest child, the eldest daughter, she will finally finish up she's finishing up her last class at U of L right now, and she will finally get her degree from U of L this fall, or this spring, I mean.
Fantastic, so.
So she,
Right.
awesome. Her didn't have to pay much for her either, for the U of L, which was fine. Glad to hear that, didn't have to pay everything for Samantha, for middle child's education, but some.
All is well.
But my children have all done quite well. I'm quite proud of all of them.
Excellent. So, Cajun,
Congratulations.
bring us back.
All right. Well, that pretty much wraps up that. And I don't really have the time, I don't think, to get into Jim Butcher and what he said. I think I'll save that for another time around.
You could maybe
Because we're
post
running-
that on the blog, perhaps.
That's possible. I might get
good
around
idea.
to that.
Good idea, Lord.
Don't hold your breath, though. You know me and writing on
Yeah.
the blog.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think we're getting kind of close to wrapping this one up, ain't we?
We are, but the HOOPAJOOBs we generally allow a little bit longer. How are you doing on time there, Martin?
I'm already in the doghouse, way over.
Oh, wait.
Well, then we should
I need
let
to
us bring it
scoot.
home. Let us
That's
bring
why
it
I
home.
thought I'd
So if we
save
could finish
Jim
it and I can scoot, that'd be awesome.
All right.
Butcher. Anybody else have any
Listeners,
announcements on
it's
there?
Mrs.
regarding
Martin's
they wanna make?
birthday, so
Yes, happy birthday, Mrs. Martin.
Amen. Yes, exactly. As we record.
Yes.
No. All right.
Well, yes. Since that's the case, I was just going to say that I love these particular episodes because it's a micro moment of these events that you went to, Cajun.
Oh, and
Sitting
coming
around-
up next month, I'll be at Jordan Con in Atlanta, actually, when you fellows are recording, and hopefully I'll be able to call in like I did with Colorado.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
I'm trying to hit a lot of these different events here.
Yes, which we are greatly pleased that you do.
There
Not
you
that just
are.
that you have the
Do
ability,
a little
but you
recon
can-
work for us all. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
eyes and
that you
ears.
share the
there.
intelligence there.
Next year, we definitely need to keep an eye on Indiana Comic Con. They had a buttload of great guests up there
Yes,
this time
yes.
around.
Yeah, I think there's actually something going on that particular weekend. We probably couldn't have gone anyways, but it is one that is being so close. We should keep an eye on. But I just love the fact that we can all sit around talking about this stuff, because this is one of the best things about those conventions, is to sit around and talk with
It's
others.
the networking. Absolutely.
About, well, not even just the networking, but just hearing other people talk about what you love.
Oh yeah, when I say networking, it sounds rather business oriented. It's not that. It's that human camaraderie, like you're talking about here. That sharing of craft. You know, it's art, not science.
All right. Well, let's wrap this one up and put it in the books. What we got coming up next?
We're going to go back to history next time. You know, we're doing this loose series these days about westward expansion, manifest destiny, and all that. We're going to talk a lot about one of the big issues on that, the Indian Wars that took place after the Civil War, the pacification, and that is a loose term, of the American West, and the atrocities, dare I say, that were committed against the Native American tribes out there. We're going to go deep with all the history and the morality or lack thereof in all of that. So be here next episode.
We hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes drop every second and fourth Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern, just in time for your morning commute. And every fifth Friday, we drop a special HOOPAJOOB episode. Spread the word we are on all the major platforms, and leave us a review. That helps others find us. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com. Join us next time. Same snake time, same otter channel.